Hi, I'm Colleen Nelson, licensed therapist, trauma expert, and fellow badass woman ready to rise up right alongside you. This podcast, Let the Rest Burn, is for the woman who has ignored, attacked, or even silenced her inner voice because she thought it was broken and needed to be fixed. It's for the woman who is ready to rise up and fully step into her desire, her joy, her full power, and make the impact she was destined to make. For the woman who cannot stand one more second waiting, watching, and witnessing the world crumble and is ready to rebuild and expand into a better future. For a woman who is so done trying to fix the world, she decided to start with healing herself, and she let the rest burn. Hi, and welcome back to Let the Rest Burn. I'm Colleen Nelson, going by Coco Nelson, and I'm here to talk about the ultra-independent and money and work and business. Full disclosure, y'all, I literally just talked at the camera for 15 minutes without the button being recorded. It is almost like my message today needed to be reiterated. Like I needed to hear it twice. I had to hear it first myself, and now I get to share it with you. If that is not a sign for the universe, I don't know what else is. So let's talk about the ultra-independent archetype, just to kind of, again, deepen your understanding of this. In our culture, in our lives, in capitalist society especially, we live in a culture that celebrates independence. And they definitely celebrate independence with money, with resources, with work, with career. And oftentimes we're rewarded for taking it 2 steps too far. Independence is about being unafraid to take the reins in your own life, tread your own path, do what needs to be done, align your life based on your values and what you want and your integrity. And independence is beautiful, but life is not just about that. Life is about connection. Life is about vulnerability. Life is about learning. And this is where the interdependence, the healthy form of connection comes in. We have our own, resources, we have our own capacities, we have our own ability of making money, of working, of doing what we want to do. And we connect that with other members of the community. That's interdependence. Ultra-independence is this shadow that comes up and says, you can't trust anybody. And in fact, if you let anybody get too close to you, they're going to see that you're a fraud, or they're going to see that you have cracks in your system, or they're going to betray you, right? Like if you show somebody your true, uninhibited self, they're going to take advantage of that in work, in personal life, in whatever capacity we're looking at. And this is so difficult because we can't live life. We can't work. We can't make money all alone. It's exhausting. It leads to burnout culture. And I'm sure many of you have experienced this or are experiencing it now, where you just grit your teeth, you put your head down, and you're like, I'm going to just get this done. When I think about the ultra-independent in work and in money, I always go back to this position in this place of like, why do I feel like I have to do it all alone? Why do I feel like if I don't do it, nobody else will do it right, or nobody else will show up for me in that way? Like, where does that come from? And why is that something that I continue to go back to in work? I have built my company on my own, right? Like I am self-employed, I am my own boss, and I built my company from the bottom up. And there's some pride in that, right? There's pride, there's recognition, there's this feeling of like, I did it and I accomplished this and this was me and I am the one who made this happen so that I can celebrate me. But that doesn't go away if I have a team. That doesn't go away if I acknowledge that people help me along the way. That doesn't go away if I let someone in. For a long time with finances, I didn't want anyone to see my books. I didn't want anyone to see where I spent money, how I spent money. I wanted to handle it myself. And in fact, I had this ebb and flow, right? Where like I would be extremely depleted financially. And then I would hustle, and bring money in just at the last minute, just in time. And then I'd be like, I did it, right? It was like that dopamine hit of like, I faced the challenge and I made it happen. But by not involving somebody else, by not getting an expert in finances and money and budgeting coming into my world, I I put myself in a position in which I got buried. I got completely buried. And I can't tell you how hard that was on my marriage. We'll talk about that more next week, but the finances being this position of like, I don't want anyone to look at it. It's all on me. I have to take it all on. It put people in my life in positions where I would get frustrated or resentful or angry if they didn't show up the way they needed to show up, or I was maybe burned out and exhausted from hustling, from trying to make ends meet or trying to focus on whatever it was that week, that I didn't show up in my fullest capacity. Money trauma is real, right? We all have it in certain ways, and being able to welcome in abundance into our body, into our life, into this, new world we're trying to create, you have to clear that trauma. You have to move it out of the way for money to continue to flow, because otherwise those same patterns will come in. I had one of the biggest months of my life last month, business wise. Big moves, big moments, canceling some retreats, making more money than I ever have, inviting new coaches into my world, hiring team members. But I noticed as I started to evolve into this next space, my same money patterns were showing up. So it didn't matter how much money I had. It didn't matter how much support I hired. It didn't matter how many choices I made. If I didn't actually face myself and admit that I can't do it all alone, that I need help, and to let people in to help me, like legitimately actually let them in to help me. If I don't do that, I will continue to make the same mistakes and have the same patterns. The ultra independent keeps us stuck. Okay. She keeps us in the past, in this place of, I have to do it all alone. I have to hustle because I can't trust anybody. You know what? This part of you is developed in a situation in which you had to do that to survive. It makes sense in childhood why we had to take over everything and get through it. But we don't live in that world as adults. We don't have to live that way. Communities are built to support us. People are built to support us. It's hard to unlearn. It's hard to unpack. It's hard to undo that in your nervous system, because it was survival and it was celebrated, and it is a condition of pride. It is something that, even today, as I'm speaking this on a podcast to y'all, I don't want to let go of. It's a fine line between independence and ultra independence, and we step over that line more than you think. I mean, I'm on a retreat in Australia right now that I planned by myself, hosted by myself. I'm here by myself, obviously with my client, but why in the world did I not have a team help me do this? And it's because there was a sense of pride I got in doing it alone. That is an old pattern. That is a pattern that doesn't serve me. That is a pattern in work. That is a pattern in money. That is a pattern with business that puts you in a position where you're constantly hustling. You're constantly trying to catch up. You're exhausted. You're burned out. You're learning on the fly. And if you're at the very beginning of your business and you don't have the ability to hire somebody, I get it, right? There is a little bit of that happens at the beginning. But you also can listen to that podcast, read that book, write in that journal, admit to yourself that you don't have to do it all alone and that you shouldn't. All of the shadow archetypes interact with each other, right? Like all 12 of them are different versions of the same thing, which is we were wounded in childhood and we're trying to figure out how to be human and not get hurt again. And these are the different ways that we try and do it. Ultra independence is one of them. I'm doing it all on my own. I've got this figured out. I don't need anybody. I don't trust you. You won't do it as well as I will. I'm going to keep you at arm's length. All of those pieces lead us to a position in which we are lonely, we're sad, we feel like nobody knows us, nobody sees us. We don't understand why we keep making the same mistakes because we think we can do it on our own. We can figure this out, right? But sometimes you need someone to reflect back to you the very things in which you can't see yourself. It doesn't matter how many books you read or podcasts you listen to, right? Like you need somebody to reflect that back. You need a community. And the ultra independent is one that is really hard to join communities because you are naturally adverse to being vulnerable and sharing with people the stuff you struggle with. For any of you that are professionals, like it's extremely hard to do that in work settings, but even in personal settings. I want to invite you into a space where you really look at the relationship you have with money, the relationship you have with work. And I want you to ask yourself, are there areas here where I really could soften, where I could relax, release control, and recognize that this is not my skill set, this isn't my genius, or this is my skill set, this is my genius, and this is where I want to focus my attention and time, but this is where I don't. All of these pieces, my friends, are part of integration, part of healing the ultra-independent. Because healing the ultra-independent just means that we admit that there's a piece of ourselves that is afraid and scared to be hurt, and that we want to heal that part. And it's not easy. Shadow work is a bit of a lifelong battle, but it's also one of those things where the more that you know your shadows, the more you understand those parts of yourself, the more you're going to be able to show up for yourself in truth. I learn so much about myself every week with y'all, okay? Like every week on these podcasts as I'm talking about them, I'm like, oh, there's another thing. It's like I'm learning right alongside you. And when you know your shadow, when you understand it, it's almost as if like its grip on you, its hold on you loses its velocity, right? It loses its strength. I don't want to do it all alone. I don't want to be responsible for everything. I want to trust people to hold me up, to support me, to keep me safe. And I still want to feel independent and powerful in the process. And it's extremely possible. Money's a tough one, y'all, because we have so many stories around it. Just because you make money with a team, exchange resources with support, magnetize things into your world that are just gifts, doesn't make you any less independent. I want you to try just for a second to like breathe and say out loud, I don't have to do this all alone. I am not responsible for everyone. There are people who will support me in every capacity of my life. I get to be vulnerable and powerful. I am strong, and I still need people to help me maintain that strength. These are the statements that we're speaking to ourselves. These are the things that we say that gives us truth and vulnerability at the same time. Next week, we're going to dig into how to have this shift in the ultra-independent world in relationships. And to be honest, how this truly can mess up our relationships. So tune in next week to talk about the ultra-independent in relationships. I've got a special guest, and we will unpack what this really means and how it shows up in our relationships and how we need to continue to fight to stay in the position of empowered leadership with our own life and not let these shadows come in and keep us in reaction consistently and constantly in our life. Being empowered means that you understand your shadows and you choose to be the observer self. You choose to line with your true self, the person who you know to be your deepest core person, not the parts of you that are in reaction to the experiences you've had in life. Thank you for joining me today in lovely Australia, and I will see you next week.
Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate every single second that you chose to set aside for you and the impact that you're going to have on the world today. To be inspired, to be seen, and to hold space starts with the very actions we take with ourselves. Look at the show notes for more information. Like and subscribe and share with friends if you feel inspired to. And as always, let the rest burn.